This is happening at the same time as one of the most important events in the financial markets in about 13 hours. Bitcoin is up about 2.9% as the event gets closer, which isn't too crazy. We're seeing nice green everywhere. And a lot of old coins are starting to pump a little because of this event. But Bitcoin is the main issue I see here, since we're talking about Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin right now is about $97,000, 0 cents. And it did reach about 976K earlier today. I do worry a little about this because I know that a lot of people will make risky bets before the event in order to play the markets, which could lead to a chain of liquidations. Also, a lot of old coins are pushing through major support levels, which makes me a little nervous before this event, because if the decision is bad, there is usually a big sell-off across the board. You probably already know what events I'm talking about. And yes, it is the Fed's choice to cut rates or put them on hold. That's what we're going to talk about. But first, let's talk about XRP, which is only up about 2% and 12%. So nothing too exciting. Here are the last 7 days in 1 month. The XRP chart is shown below. To be honest, it's getting a little tight. Eventually something will happen, and now we wait for a big move. Or as we get closer to the point on this chart where we start to really wonder what the odds are that XRP will jump to a new high from here. What are the odds that XRP will break above this trend and go even higher than some of these earlier highs like the January highs? Because of Bitcoin, I don't think that will happen for the rest of the year. What I mean is that I'll be keeping a close eye on Bitcoin in the short term, which is about a week from now. As the event gets closer, you can see that Bitcoin is in a nice uptrend on the daily chart. It's organized pretty well, but we're now in that resistance zone, and I won't be happy until we get past it. Since we are in the resistance zone, it's important to remember that XRP and many other cryptocurrencies are almost ready for a big move. They are waiting for a sudden move to happen, which could be a sell-off. I know you guys will hate to hear this, but it's true. I'm talking about getting rid of everyone who was long on, this, as a result of the liquidations. There could be a liquidity spiral that causes Bitcoin to drop a lot at a time when it controls 65.2% of the market. We've been here before, but this is the most Bitcoin we've ever seen. I'm sorry, I lost it. Let me go back a week to get a better look. 65% of the market is made up of Bitcoin, and this is the most Bitcoin that has ever been used, going all the way back to January 2021. Well, let's take a closer look at this. We are now at a big resistance zone across the board, and if the Fed does something bad for the market, we're probably talking about rate cuts, since we want the rate to go down. For example, this is Bitcoin's 3-day chart. I've shown that there is a nice hole in the market down here that Bitcoin could very well fill. That amount of money would be about 88.4 to 93K Bitcoin. If we break through this trend line, it means that we are going to fill this. That's a loss of about 94.5K or 94. The same thing I would say as 94K. It would be a big sign that this could be the next big thing. We only need to look at 1 day at a time to see that Bitcoin is going this direction. The daily candle needs to close below 93.7% K to show that this is where Bitcoin is going next. Again, we are only thinking about 1 day at a time while we wait to see what the Fed decides. The chance of a rate cut happening in May is about 1.7%. That's right, there's a 1.7% bet on a rate cut. It's funny because we also know that there is a 98% chance that the Fed will keep rates the same tomorrow. This is true for both the retail and BY market. Do you think that very small 2% chance could come true? Rates will likely go up. Rates could be lowered today, which would be big news. There would be no bears left, and Bitcoin price would be back to a very bullish state, as I think we'll break over $100,000, 0 cents and zeros. There's also information from CNBC that there's a 1/3 chance of a cut at the June session, which is what I'm most interested in right now. We know that Jerome Powell could surprise us and cut tomorrow, but I still think June is the best month to watch. There's a 31.9. Many people think that the BPS will drop by 25 to 50 basis points in June. The exact cut will be unknown, but I personally think it will be 50 basis points. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I expect it to be about 31%, followed by a 9% cut for a much bigger one. Besides this, I'm really interested in what the Fed does. I think today is a very important day for all stock markets. Besides that, I'd like to see what the M2 supply for all the major currencies looks like. This is what I've been saying. The markets are getting too liquid. We definitely need more liquidity. I've already talked about the 4-year pattern and why it's important to remember that Bitcoin closely follows liquidity. If you look at how Bitcoin's price changes during elections, you'll notice that liquidity cycles last for 4 years. This is great for Bitcoin, right? A lot of people think that this was built into Bitcoin, but it's actually been perfectly aligned since the beginning of Bitcoin. In other words, the 4-year cycle mostly follows the cash cycles, which can change in big ways. But I'm focusing on the M2 because China has been on the lead for a while now. There are signs that the EU and Japan are making real progress in this area, but for now, our attention is still on the US and what it does next. Thoughts on the Fed's most recent move, which is something to do with the rate cuts? Do you think the Fed should lower rates? They don't have to. In fact, many people think they're adding cash to avoid rate cuts. It's good news for crypto that the Federal Reserve just bought $20 billion, 0 cents worth of 3-year bonds. To avoid rate cuts, they are adding money to the system. This is also why the market has been moving today, which I find interesting. This is why Bitcoin is selling around $97 since K, and it's also because it's only about 13 hours until the next market open. I know it says 15 hours, but by the time this goes live, it'll only be about 13 hours. This event takes place and the FOMC meeting begins. I don't think the official news will come out for a while, but we're already starting to see the kwon, which is another name for the Fed's cash on hand. Also, Frank Jester wrote a blog post about this. The Federal Reserve bought almost $15 billion, 0 cents worth of 0 cent notes at the sale. Really? That's K by a different name? That's interesting to see. I think the M2 stock in the US is about to go through the roof.